In today's video, I want to talk about 8 productivity hacks that I use every day to develop a more efficient schedule. And I think that generally my approach to productivity is quite different, because I think some people, they want to be productive in order to hustle more and to do more things, but I think my approach is just to do the things that I have in a very efficient way, so that I will have more free time to just chill. I think that, you know, now that we are in our youth, it's a bit time is so precious, and in the 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss actually talks about how the new rich are people who have more time to do things that they like instead of having more money. So I really do feel quite aligned with this sort of mindset, and this is what sets out the groundwork for why I'm always trying to find ways to do things in the most efficient manner. Okay, so the first hack is the Eisenhower Matrix, and this is not really a typical hack that you use every day. It's more of a general approach on how you find tasks that you should prioritize. So there are 4 quadrants that are split out by 2 axes, one being important and not so important, and then the other axis being urgent and not so urgent. So quadrant 1 will consist of tasks that are urgent and important, and this should be your priority because these are deadline driven assignments. So for example, if you have a school project that is due the next week, then this should be the first task on your to-do list, followed by things that are on quadrant 2. So quadrant 2 consists of things that are important but not urgent. So this would include things like personal growth, reading more books, or also networking. These are things that are good for you in the long run, but don't exactly have a deadline. So I think in 7 Habits, Stephen Covey argues that a lot of people always focus on quadrant 1 and also on things that are not urgent and not important. Things that sort of fill up the day, like meetings or replying to emails. These don't really contribute a lot to your day. It's just sort of filler items, but people are often busy with them. So what you can do is to try to cut out the tasks within these quadrants. So for example, you can ask yourself, is this meeting really necessary? And if it is not, then maybe you shouldn't attend it. Or if you have a lot of emails to reply to, you shouldn't do it throughout the day because it might break your mental state of mind. So maybe you can leave it to the end and focus on your tasks within quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. So I personally emphasize a lot of my time on quadrant 2, reading books and networking, because I believe that these things are personally important to me, and I feel that they do have benefit in the long run. And even though by nature they don't have a deadline, sometimes I will set deadlines for myself. So the example of networking, whenever I enter into a new company, I always want to talk to as many people as possible to learn more about the company culture and the roles that they are doing. So I'll actually set a quantitative matrix, talk to 3 people by the end of the month, and I think that this always helps to push me to be more motivated to do that task. So the second thing would be to have a weekly agenda as well as a daily highlight. So from my Notion, I always use this page which shows all the tasks that I need to complete for the week, and I'll put it into this block first, and then after that drag it towards to each day depending on how much I can commit. So now I'm interning 3 days, so I work from 9 to 6, then I have about 8 hours at night. So within the 8 hours, what's the reasonable amount of work that I can do? I also don't want to overcommit to the point where my mental health takes a toll. Even though I try to commit to it as much as possible, I'm still quite flexible. So for example, if someone wants to have a last-minute meal, I will prioritize that, and then perhaps on the next day I will work a little bit harder and sleep a little later because I'm trying to finish the task that I have set for myself. But generally this approach has worked for me because I think I'm someone who tries to follow the schedule properly. I know that other people, they sometimes when they put tasks, they find it hard to follow. I wouldn't say that when I first started it was easy to commit to it, but at the end of the day, I don't want my tasks to pile up and for me to freak out when finals comes. So I know that I have to make I have to do consistent revision so that I can just take it easy when finals come, because I don't have to rush on my task. So I think the point of time blocking and batching follows really nicely because after you set your daily highlight, then you can plan your day around it. So if you see my calendar, it's quite colorful because I color code everything. So the colors between study and work is red, and then the color for chill is blue, and then time for exercise is like purple. So these colors are purposefully like very distinct from each other, so I'm able to see how I split up my time. Like for example, I don't want it to be so red. I'm already working from 9 to 6 that day, then it's gonna be 8 hours of my day that is red. So I want the subsequent hours to only have a little bit more of red where I'm revising my work and then I want to chill. So I might want to plan a dinner with my friend or just like watch a Netflix film, and then maybe on the next day, because it's my school day, my day is a little bit more empty, so then I will fill in more red blocks there. So like a good rule of thumb would just be to have like a good proportion of like colors, and definitely I would want to check that I have sufficient purple, because if I don't check it like that, then I will get lazy and then I won't go for spin class. So it's a way to keep me very accountable. And this sort of batching also works a lot because, as I said previously, like whenever I change between tasks, I take quite a while to get accustomed to the new task, and I think I'm someone who doesn't really like catch on super fast. I need a bit of time to read the context and then to slowly like get into the state of it, to remember what went through in that class beforehand before I start going into the content and revising properly. So in that sense, whenever I batch things, I put quite a few hours to one task so that I'm able to complete, like let's say draft 1 of this assignment, or I'm able to active recall at least 2 to 3 chapters before I move on to the next task. And it's really helpful, but I think it also depends on the person. So for example, some people might get bored after like 2 hours of doing the same module and they want to switch over. So I think it depends on what works best for you. So the next thing would be the 2-day rule. I think this rule was created by mell-ø. I'm not very sure, but I first saw it on his video. I think it was talking about building the habit of going to the gym, and at that point of time I really needed this. So for a bit of context, when I was JC, I was quite lazy and overweight, and before entering uni I wanted to lose like quite a bit of weight. So I wanted to lose 10 to 15 kg to reach my target weight. So when I used this, I kept going for spin classes and I went for a lot of like F45 trials, and within 2 to 3 months I lost 9 kg, which I think is pretty impressive because if not for this rule I wouldn't have done it at all. So I think it really kept me quite accountable, and I think it's super useful, especially for working out and maybe like eating healthy, but it might not be as relevant for doing assignments because you don't really have that amount of time. I think the 2-day rule would be most relevant for like building a long-term habit. So breaking down from the 2-day rule, like within your day itself, I think that I always use this 2-minute rule. So this 2-minute rule has been talked about so much by productivity YouTubers like Ali Abdaal and mell-ø, and it talks about how like if you can do a task within 2 minutes, then just do it. When I first listened to it, I thought that it was a bit at odds with batching, because batching means that you should just delay that thing to the end of the day. But if it only takes 2 minutes, it doesn't make sense for you to batch it. It makes sense for you to just do it because it only takes up like 2 minutes of your time, and in most cases it only takes me like 30 seconds. I think I use this a lot when I'm trying to like get into the habit of being more organized and clean. So I think like one thing is like making my bed, or like putting back a charger in its original position. So if you see like my bedroom tour, you realize that each charger has like a compartment, and you know, sometimes like I might just leave it at the charging station, which makes it very messy. So the 2-minute rule comes into play then when I tell myself that okay, I need to take out the charger and put it back into its original position so that I can find it later, and that my desk is always clean. And this applies also to like my bed. Like making my bed only takes about 30 seconds, so I should just do it at that moment, and it doesn't take up much time. Next thing would be to set internal deadlines for yourself when there are no deadlines. So okay, I'll just show you my page with all the legit deadlines that I have first. So this is the page where I consolidate all the components I have for each of the module that I'm taking, and then I will write down the date that it's due, and I'll set a reminder so that it will tell me 1 week before it's due, and then I can start like trying to rush it if I'm not already done with it. I think most of the time I'm like quite a kiasu person, so I will try to finish the assignment like at least 1 week before it's due if like the prof released it earlier on. But sometimes if they release it only like a few days before, then I have no choice but to rush it then. So I will try to put more of my work before that, so that when they release it, I can spend the next 3 to 4 days just like focusing on this task alone. And when there are no deadlines for myself, like for example this semester I have 4 modules but I only have 1 midterm, so that's really scary because I can only start like telling myself to revise when it's near finals week. And I'm quite afraid because like for my internship, some of the deliverables are within like the November period when I'm having my finals. So I'm trying to set an internal deadline for myself, finish revising all the content up to week 7. So I'm setting like a fake midterm for myself to test whether I can remember the content, and if there were a midterm, would I be able to do well. Okay, the last hack is possibly the most important one because it's setting a bedtime alarm. So this is a tip given by Matthew Walker, and I think there's been a lot of discussion about his book, How We Sleep. Like a lot of people that I've been talking to have actually read this book already, and this book talks about like your circadian rhythm. So like humans generally wake up when the sun wakes up. So if you're an early bird, you wake up at like 6. If you're a night owl, you might wake up a bit later, like 8 to 9 a.m, which I think is still pretty early, but that's what he says in the book. So I actually haven't read the book, but I watched his masterclass, which I think it's super useful. It's also quite expensive, but it was good because he explains it very clearly in his masterclass videos and has like the graphs showing like the rhythm of your sleep cycle. So I thought it was very easy to visualize, and I learned a lot about like your sleep hormones like melatonin and how it's being released to you when night comes. So with that knowledge, I begin to be more aware of when my lights are on and off. So I try not to on like super bright light in the middle of the night because I don't want to like ruin my sleep cycle. I want my melatonin to be to come out and to make me sleepy naturally, to follow my natural circadian rhythm. And he also says that, you know, people usually set morning alarms, but this already disrupts your sleep cycle. If you are sleeping naturally, you should be waking up at a natural timing. So you should be setting a bedtime alarm. So if you need to be up at like 9 a.m, you should count back 8 hours and set your bedtime alarm then, so that when your phone tells you that it's time to sleep, you sleep, so that your body can wake you up naturally. And I found that this was a lot healthier for me because I don't have to wake up in a bad mood. Like if I'm in deep sleep and my alarm rings, I will be in a bad mood the entire day. But now with bedtime alarms, I feel a lot more alert in the morning and I feel more focused throughout the day. So it's really quite helpful.